Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Emmy the Cat Lady, and we are starting a new section of the Science of Foliage series. So we are doing the flora. We've done the fauna, we've done all the creatures and the animals and things. So we're starting with the flora, which is typically your kind of plant things. So talking about the different kind of plants that you can find across the wasteland and their uses. So today we're actually doing Wasteland Mycology. A lot of people think that fungi, like mushrooms and things, are plants, but they're not really. They're fungi. So mycology is the study of fungi, and it's a huge subject area. There's an estimated 2 to 3 million species of fungi on Earth, but we have formally classified about 155,000 of them. Some of them are small and microscopic, which would be your kind of yeasts and your moulds, while others form larger multicellular structures like mushrooms. So they're eukaryotic, which means that they have more in common with us than they do with bacteria in terms of the way their cells are set up. And this is why antibiotics typically don't work on fungal infections, because the target, they're very different. But they're often kind of lumped in with plants, but they're not really plants either in that sense. The cells do have cell walls, but they're made up of chitin rather than cellulose. So again, the structure is quite different from plant cells. And they don't photosynthesize, so plants get their energy from sunlight, but fungi don't. They have to eat. It's not, they absorb nutrients essentially from other things, which is essentially eating. So they do play a big role in decomposition of dead things. So that's why you will see fungi like mushrooms and things growing on fallen trees and things like that. They do play a big role in the decomposition, which is part of the natural circle of life, if you will. So they grow bigger in order to get around, and some of them release things like spores to kind of spread themselves around. The reproduction methods are very complicated and very varied. Some of the species of fungi actually have literally thousands of biological sexes, like thousands of different sexes and different ways that the chromosomes, it's so complex. And mushrooms are a fruiting body, so technically a fruit, kind of. It's very weird, but you know, it's they're vastly different and often kind of misunderstood. And fungi can have all kinds of effects on other organisms. So some of them are edible and quite nutritious. Some of them make you hallucinate. Don't recommend those ones. Some of them are toxic and make you dead. Also don't recommend those ones. And you shouldn't eat mushrooms you find unless you're absolutely sure you know what they are. And some of them can act as like parasites or infectious agents that can cause things. So athlete's foot is a fungal infection between the toes. Ringworm is a fungal infection of the skin. Despite the name, they call it ringworm. The ring comes from the fact that it can create these red kind of ring shapes on your skin if you have it. But worm, it's not a worm, it's a fungal infection, so very common. Anyone that's ever works with animals on a regular basis probably will get ringworm at some point. It's kind of inevitable. I got it when I was at vet school. It happens. And I think a lot of people know that some of the earliest antibiotics were actually produced by fungi and became the basis. So for example, penicillin by Alexander Fleming. Penicillin, the beta-lactam class of antibiotics, the penicillins, were produced by fungi as well. And of potentially more interest to us here in the Fallout universe is that there are what's called radiotrophic fungi, which means these are fungi that seem to thrive in radiation and potentially absorb or take energy, essentially eat radiation. which is quite interesting. So there are specimens that are reported to have been discovered in and around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Pripyat in Ukraine, which is the site of a very well-known nuclear disaster that happened in 1986, about 8 months before I was born. So yeah. And a lot of the fungi that we're going to talk about today aren't actually, it's not clear that they are a specific species that I can find. So, and there is so many, but there are a couple where I've managed to kind of identify what the species might be, or at least there's one of them that I have. And yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting. So we'll start with the one that does show up in all 3 of the modern Fallout single-player adventures, which is the cave fungus. So I've come here, we're here actually in Zion. Zion's Canyon's a really good place to find the cave fungus in Fallout New Vegas. So it's here. So they do look a wee bit different in the different games. And I say it's not clear what species they are, because most of the radiotrophic fungi that we know of don't create mushrooms or, you know, kind of large sort of bodies or anything like that. So, but given how much other species have changed in the Fallout universe since the bombs fell, it's not out of left field that, you know, some new fungi might develop and result in, you know, potentially evolve to thrive in a radioactive environment like this. So, kind of makes sense. And the common factor is that the cave fungus does tend to reduce your radiation levels a tiny bit if you eat them. So in Fallout 3 you find them in Little Lamplight, which is a former spelunking tourist attraction that became a town populated entirely by children and dogs. And the fungus grows around the natural pools of water within the caves. That's fairly true for the majority of fungi, is that they like dark, warm and damp environments to thrive. But the cave fungus there does especially like it when you put strange meat in the water. Do you remember what strange meat is? Long pork. It's people. So the cave fungus eats people and rads. And you can set up a deal with Little Lamplighters with Mayor McCready, where if you give them strange meat, they'll give you some of the cave fungus, because it's what the kids there basically pretty much live off, because they can't really go out much to forage or to hunt or to trade because of the threat of the super mutants. So yeah, but strange meat, which means humans basically. So interesting. And then in Fallout New Vegas it's not as common. Obviously the Mojave Desert is a desert, so you know it's drier. You can find it in some of the caves around the Colorado River and Lake Mead, and it's also very common, as you can see, in the caves in Zion Canyon, because every few steps we've got some ferns here as well, because there's a wee bit of daylight getting in, but there's mushrooms all over the place in here. What to expect. And this one here's the actual cave fungus that we're interested in. And obviously in Zion there's a lot more rainfall and a lot more water around as well, so kind of makes sense. You do also find that legionaries carry them. They obviously use them as a food source, and you also find them on tunnelers in the Divide as well, which is kind of interesting. So again, potentially getting used as a food source. So the cave fungus is used, it's considered a food in hardcore mode in New Vegas, but it's not used in any food recipes, but it is used in some crafting. So pick one up and have a look at its properties. So there we go. So cave fungus, or rads -10 and HP +1 for 4 seconds. So very tiny bit of healing, but it does also do a very small amount of rad removal as well. It is used in a few different crafting things. So there we go, we've got cave fungus. We've got some glowy ones in here as well. So yeah, blue glowy ones. More spore plants. So yeah, you do need to be aware these caves can be a wee bit treacherous, full of spore carriers and spore plants and glowing mushrooms. So you can find some of the cave fungus at Vault 22 as well. So, and I think in the caves around Vault 22, if I remember correctly. There we go, now we're not in combat anymore. Just had to eliminate a few spore plants and things. Right, now we are here. So this is one of the survivalists' caves, just to get a look at some ingredients. So there's 3 things that you can use the cave fungus for in Fallout New Vegas. So let's see. Yep, so the first one on the list here is Blood Shield. So you also need a barrel cactus fruit and a spore plant pod and 35 survival. And what this does, this is basically a better antidote. So it treats poison, but it also grants you some poison resistance. So you get 110 poison resistance. As well as HP plus 8 for 6 seconds. So quite a useful item, especially in Zion Canyon if you run across the giant cazadors or something. So, you know, quite a useful one there that you can make. And then, just trying to figure out what's going to be next alphabetically. Hydra, there we go. So we've got Hydra. Is another one, so you need cave fungus. We also need night stalker blood and a rad scorpion poison gland, and that is a chem that restores lung condition, so kind of does the same as doctor's bag, which can be again quite handy, although that has quite a high survival skill requirement to make. And then there's the healing poultice. Yes, just double checking my notes there. So yeah, this is another tribal recipe that's added by Honest Hearts, and you basically get a better healing powder. So the healing powder that you can make that Sunny Smiles teaches you to do at the beginning of the game, you need a Brock flower and a Xander root. But if you add a cave fungus and a Nevada agave fruit to that, then you get a restoration to limb condition as well as 11 HP per second for 18 seconds at the expense of a little bit of agility. But it is, you know, superior to the healing powder in that regard. So quite a useful stuff. So, you know, the cave fungus, it's not as common until you come into Zion and Fallout New Vegas, but it does come in handy. It really does come in handy for making some of these items. And I will admit, it's something that I never really bothered that much with before, but so getting into the research for this series, definitely something to think about for my next playthrough, to maybe try using some more of the crafting system, because Fallout New Vegas, I don't think it always gets enough credit for having quite an interesting crafting system. Fallout 3's crafting system was very bland. You know, you had a handful of weapon schematics and that was about it. Fallout 4 crafting system is insane and pretty amazing. I just tapped the space bar there by mistake. You know, but Fallout New Vegas, it definitely has, there's a lot of interesting things, and then there's a lot more that's added onto it by all the DLCs, which I think is really, really good. So that's kind of covers it in Fallout New Vegas. You do find the cave fungus in Fallout 4, and it is edible, and it does reduce your rads a little bit, same as it does in 3 and New Vegas. But you can only find it inside the nucleus in Far Harbour, which kind of makes sense. It's a radioactive dry dock, there's no natural light, it's dark, it's damp, full of rads. And in Fallout 4, interestingly, the cave fungus plays no part in any crafting recipes, so it's just something that you can get a tiny bit of rad reduction from, so really not that exciting. May or may not be a missed opportunity with that one, but there we go. But there is another one in Fallout New Vegas, so we're going to take a trip to somewhere else. Right, so here we are. We are in Big Mountain in Old World Blues for the next part of the thing that we're going to be talking about. So where's going to be the best place to find? Where's the Forbidden Zone Dome? There we go, Mysterious Cave. Yeah, a little bit red on this side of the map, so don't worry, I've got God mode on, so we're perfectly safe to go into the Mysterious Cave, but it's a good place to find the mutant cave fungus. So this is a variant of the cave fungus, which glows nice and bright green, as you can see, and it is a wee bit different. It actually adds radiation to you instead of removing it. So it is a consumable. You can eat it, although it doesn't really get used in any food recipes. The hardcore mode does kind of consider it food in a way, which is interesting, but it does play quite an interesting role in a bunch of really interesting healing items in the game. So this is a mysterious cave. If you know, you know, so we're not going to go too far in. I can hear all the blowflies buzzing about. Yep, creepy things. If you know, you know. So the mutant cave fungus has come about. You can only find it in Big Mountain, typically in the caves and the tunnels around the place, all that kind of thing. And it's quite interesting. I say it's involved in an awful lot of crafting recipes, and it's kind of counts as food, but it's not really, you know, it's not going to make a massive difference to your kind of hunger and things like that. So where is the hot plate? So I don't. Yeah, Battle Brew. So it's used in Battle Brew, which is one that you can pick up over an X13 recipe, and it does a lot of things. So you need a mutant cave fungus, you need a salient green, which you can basically break down any plant item into salient green. It's not people, that's soylent green is people. And a bottle of vodka as well, and you combine them together. So it is technically an alcoholic beverage, so you lose intelligence of 1, gain strength of 1, your damage resistance goes up by 35, and your hit points go up by 50. So really quite an interesting healing item. And then at the beginning of that list you'll see red mist as well. So this is an additional effect that is shorter lasting. So that boosts your maximum AP and also adds another +1 strength for about 20 seconds. So it's like it gives you a bit of a adrenaline boost almost once you take it. So that's Battle Brew. Very interesting item. Definitely could see the benefits for the right kind of character, especially someone that's maybe using melee and things that depends on higher strength for better damage, and also your damage resistance if you're charging in to fight enemies face to face. So that's quite an interesting one there. And the next one is Black Blood Sausage, which is a healing item, and it heals your HP, so it's +35 for 20 seconds, so it's a really, really good healing item. And it does also boost your maximum HP. You would think it counts as a food item, being that it's a sausage, but it's not. It's not considered a food item in this game, which is kind of funny, because in Scotland, blood sausage, we would call it black pudding. That's the name, and it is made primarily. Blood is one of the major ingredients, usually pig's blood, I believe, and it's something that I would definitely consider it a food. I like black pudding, it's quite tasty. But in New Vegas, the game treats it as a chem, so, you know, that's fair enough. But yeah, so that's one, and it is this really quite a good healing item. So you need the blood sausage, you need the mutant cave fungus, you need a bottle of wine, and you need the Xander root. So it does have a lot of ingredients required to make it, but that's a pretty impressive healing item for all that stuff there. So that's interesting. And then next up we have got, we need to look for N. So you can see the number of things that you can actually make in this game. It's quite a huge list. Night Stalker Squeezins, that's what we were looking for. So this is another consumable item, which heals a little bit and adds rads to you. You need flour, you need mutant cave fungus, and you need Night Stalker blood. If you have acquired the perk Mile in Their Shoes, then this item also gives you +1 perception, +5 poison resistance, and +5 sneak for about 4 minutes of like real time. What is going on here? Why is this out of alignment? That's very weird. Anyway, and then finally you have the thick red paste. So there it is. So for this you need flour, you need mutant cave fungus, and you need the thin red paste, which is an item that you can find lying about in some of the labs here. And thick red paste, again, it's another really, really good healing item. So you get HP restoration, and you also get an increase in your maximum HP. It doesn't actually say that here for some reason, but that's what the wiki says, is that it does boost your maximum HP. But this item's not affected by your survival or medicine skills. It's not considered a food item, but the Legion consider it a banned item when, you know, they ban like, you know, chems and various things, so they ban this item. But the duration is affected by Logan's Loophole, by Chemist, and by Day Tripper, so it's kind of a chem and kind of not. So bit of a weird one, so there we go. So yeah, it's some really interesting recipes that you can make.
Nurse, this man's got a severe case. Just shoo along.
Okay. So yeah, a couple of really, really interesting kind of healing items that you can make in this game with the mutant cave fungus. So yeah, definitely worth looking into, I would say. So that's us done with Vegas, but we do have to head over to the Commonwealth because there's a couple of new ones in there. Hi Muggy. That have some other interesting properties to talk about, so I will see you over there just shortly. Okay, welcome back to the Commonwealth. So we're here just outside Red Rocket, so everybody probably knows there's this place here, there's the mole rat den that's underneath, to talk about the glowing fungus. So I think these ones have already been harvested. This is a survival playthrough, by the way, just to kind of show the recipes. So the glowing fungus is one that's found across the Commonwealth. Typically you find it near water and caves, all the usual places you'd expect to find fungi. And again, there's not a clear kind of real life species that correlates with this one. It is most likely to be another one of these radiotrophic fungus that has developed. Oh, I've got hungry, fair enough. But in this game, you can eat it, but it adds radiation, it doesn't absorb radiation, and it's not treated as a food. So if I was to eat one right now, I don't know how many I've got, if I've got any on me, but if I was to eat them right now, it wouldn't actually do anything for me. So they're not kind of treated kind of like a chem in the game, and it's not used in any food recipes. But you can see it, you can usually spot it on the outside because it glows, hence the name. So at night time especially, it's quite visible. The mole rat den here inside especially is quite a easy place. I wouldn't stick my head in, I'm sure it's fine. If I've collected all the glowing fungus, I've probably cleared it out. But yeah, you can see we've got the brain fungus as well, which we will get to just shortly. And then, yep, glowing fungus there. So yeah, I think we're safe. You can pick them up. So they like damp areas, they like dark areas, and they like radioactive areas. So you can see there's one growing next to the big nuclear reactor, so they thrive amidst the radiation. But there's loads of them in this cave actually, there's quite a lot, so it's a good source, especially given how, you know, early the game you come across this place. So it is used in quite a few crafting recipes, so we're going to head out. So my phone with all my notes decided to fall asleep there. There we go, whenever you're ready, Fallout 4. Right, let's go back uphill to Red Rocket where there is a chemistry station, because that's what we need. So it's not used in any food recipes, but it is used in some specific recipes that you would use the chemistry station for. So let's have a look at the menu. So I think actually it's in healing. So there's a few the one that's in the base game as well as survival mode is Radaway, so you need glowing fungus to make Radaway. You also need antiseptic, plastic and purified water, and Radaway obviously removes your rads. In survival mode it affects your fatigue, suppresses your immunity and makes you more at risk of disease and things, so be cautious with Radaway if you're going to do that. But with survival mode, because it's added diseases, then the glowing fungus is a lot more valuable because you also need it to make antibiotics, which I actually do have the stuff to make now. So you need acid, glowing fungus, purified water and 3 stim packs. So the antibiotics are obviously very useful for curing your illnesses, but resource wise they're pretty intensive, but they're quite a rare spawn in the wild, so and you also need to take chemist in order to make them. But then there's also the herbal remedies, so there's 3 of these, and glowing fungus is an ingredient in all of them. So you've got the herbal anodyne, which resists insomnia and weakness, the herbal antimicrobial that resists infection and parasites, and the herbal stimulant that resists fatigue and lethargy. So the way these work is you take them kind of before you do something risky, and they're supposed to prevent or at least reduce your chances of getting the specific disease types that they protect against. But each one of these, the ingredients are slightly different, but glowing fungus is an ingredient for all 3 of them as well. So if you're playing in survival mode, you probably want to gather these as often as you can, because they definitely will come in handy. And then the other fungus, which I can show you, which we saw back down in the Morat cave, is the brain fungus. So there's better specimens inside here actually of the brain fungus. So this one is not really confirmed or clear. It does have a nice glow to it in the dark. That Pip-Boy light is very bright. And it's called brain fungus because it does kind of look like little brains growing out of it. The most likely real life species that this is based on is the brain puffball, which is Calvatia craniformis. And it's an edible puffball mushroom that's found across North America, especially in the east and the south, so it would be potentially found in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts kind of area. And it is edible, so when it's immature, it can, and it's still pure white, it can be eaten, but it does turn yellow and become more powdery in order to release its spores, and at that point I think it's still safe to eat, but it doesn't taste very good. But it is also used in some traditional medicines, both in some native indigenous people in North America and in Asia and China and Japan as well. It's used to control bleeding and to help treat wounds. It is edible in the game, but like the glowing fungus, it's not considered food, so eating them won't actually do anything to my hunger. It just gives me rads. So just bear that in mind. It's edible, but it's not really considered food. So brain fungus is used in one single crafting recipe, but one that potentially is of interest to some people, and it's quite on the nose. It's used to make mentats because it's a brain fungus, so of course it is, which is interesting given the other ingredients of mentats are Abraxo cleaner and lead. I'd be interested to know the biochemistry and pharmacology of that, to use Abraxo cleaner and lead and fungus in order to make you smarter. I don't really know how that would work, but yeah, quite a funny one, but there you go. So the brain fungus, you find it all over. It's growing in caves, it grows in the walls of buildings and things like that. But if you really need a lot of mentats, then better start collecting the brain fungus. But yeah, so that's kind of a funny one. And then there's one more that is in Far Harbour. Okay, so I've just taken a wee jaunt up to Far Harbour for this final fungi. So this is the last of our fallout fungi, and it's called blight, and it's one of these ones here. So it's what's called a polypore shelf fungus, although again can't really identify a specific species of fungus that it could be based on. But you do see these kind of shelf fungi on trees quite a lot, and in real life you'll see them, especially kind of old trees, fallen trees. They have these mushrooms growing on the bark that look like little shells. So that's obviously where the name comes from. So blight is found across the island in Far Harbour, growing on trees. We are just at Longfellow's cabin here. There he is. Because I knew that was a place where it was definitely going to be able to be found. So they do glow. You can kind of see. Yeah, I feel that Longfellow as well. But yeah, you can kind of see it does have a little bit of a glow to it. And you can collect it. So this one is actually considered a food item in the game. But they do add rads to you. So why is my Pip-Boy zoomed in so much? So, well, this one doesn't apparently, but that might be a perk thing. But they do normally add a little bit of rads and HP, but they are treated as a food item if you're in survival mode. So it has a standard disease risk for food, but it does reduce your hunger, which is, nice. It is used in a couple of interesting recipes. Yeah. So first of all, there's a food. Yeah. So it's used in one of the recipes that's added by Far Harbour, which is your seasoned rabbit skewers. So you need a few things, but blight is an ingredient. And an interesting little item because it adds +1 luck. So you need aster, black blood leaf blight, lureweed, and a rabbit leg. So that's all things you can find in Far Harbour. And you make the seasoned rabbit skewers and you get +1 luck for 30 minutes, which, makes sense. Rabbits' feet are lucky, so eating rabbit in theory makes you lucky. That's probably the connection there. And then the other one is one that I probably don't actually have access to. That's the workshop. Oh, it's a rad stag. I was like, wait, what is that? It's this rad stag. That's fine. Not so scary. Because you need to find one of the Islanders' Almanacs, which is like the sort of skill book that was added in Far Harbour, and it's the recipe roundup, and that gives you recipes to make sludge cocktails. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they're made at the cooking station or if they're made at the chemistry workbench. Beverage. Yeah, no, we don't have. We've only got the fire belly, but yeah, I don't actually think I have a save file on this computer that has access to that stuff. But it's called the Strong Sludge Cocktail, and it adds 150 rads to your rad counter, but it also increases your strength based on your rad level. So the higher your rads, the bigger the bonus to your strength that you get. So it's very interesting and kind of niche specific tactical option for melee users potentially, and I know there is other equipment that can kind of have that effect where you get bonuses based on your rad level, and the higher your rads, the higher the buffs that you get and things like that. So it's sort of very specific, but for the right character, potentially a good tactical option in order to boost your damage output and things. So that's kind of an interesting one. But yeah, so that's all the fungi that you can find in Modern Fallout and what it does, including some of the recipes that it's involved in. The crafting systems in Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4 are really, really good. I definitely feel like New Vegas walked so that Fallout 4 could run in that regard. But even in Fallout New Vegas, especially with the DLCs, the variety of things that you can make and the benefits and stuff, it's really quite an interesting aspect, and it's something that I certainly In my early days of playing the game, I kind of ignored and glossed over. I didn't really do much of that, but I think it's really interesting to dig into the details, and certainly could make for some interesting new strategies and interesting new character builds to try out in these games, based on some of the weird and wonderful things that you can create. So that's us for Wasteland Mycology. Next week we're going to start with Wasteland Botany, so we're going to talk about the plants. I'm still trying to work out the best way to kind of split them up. There's about 40 plants to talk about between all the games, so obviously one on its own isn't really enough to make a reasonable length video. So I'll probably, be talking about a few each week, but want to kind of group them together in a sort of logical way. I do have a spreadsheet, so I'm working on putting that together and planning it. So I can obviously make sure that we're noting where you can find them, what they look like, what they do, what benefits they have, and the different crafting recipes that they're involved in as well. So, potentially quite useful. And if anybody wants access to the database once I've got it completed, potentially I could share that on Google Docs or something if anybody's interested in having a look at it and making a copy for themselves. Let me know, and I'll maybe have you think about that, because it might be a useful little kind of reference for people that want to do more in the crafting in New Vegas or in Fallout 4. So if you think that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. And that's me, and that's all the fungi signing off, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.